Mr. Tsipras, the extremists of Europe are applauding you. And I think Fidel Castro wrote you a letter of congratulations, did he not, on your magnificent triumph?
I'm even ready to come to Athens to discuss it with you because I like such a challenge. With you directly. We are in fact sleepwalking towards a Grexit.
Do you think that the Greeks will bow their heads when they didn't during the slavery of the Ottoman Empire? We can exist and survive without the Eurozone.
The European project is actually beginning to die. Those monsters, Kohl and Mitterrand, backed up with a clever but dangerous Delors, believed that if they put in place an economic and monetary union, there would be political union.
In 1973, Chile was in much worse state than General August Pinochet introduced normal economy, and in 2 years Chile became the richest country in Latin America. Black colonials are not a solution, but I hope that some golden general will fulfill his duty and save Greece. Moreover, I think European Union must be destroyed.
And now, colleagues, please.
No, there are certain people in here who are saying that the problem is not Islamic terrorism, it's the right, the populist, it's Orban, it's Le Pen, it's Cameron, it's Liga Nord. Thank you, Mr. Tsipras, thank you to the people of Greece, and thank you to those citizens who with such guts decided to break out of this cage.
What others are afraid of is that Greece will show by leaving the euro that one can survive better outside it than in it. Thank you.
Today I'm going to address the principles of European culture. Let us examine, for example, decency, partnership and the way we deal with each other as friends. Mr. Tsipras, you represent a government which said these things in recent weeks. Defence Minister said there was likely to be an unleashing of hordes of migrants to the rest of Europe if the settlements were not made, and we were told that we were terrorists as well. Now I would have thought that if the Prime Minister of Greece comes along to us, he should apologise for those utterly unacceptable statements. Unfortunately, he's passed over them in silence. I'd like to continue to discuss the issue of dignity. Now, dignity is involved in terms of who your friends are. Look around this chamber. You'll see to the far left and the far right, you have a lot of applause. Mr. Tsipras, the extremists of Europe are applauding you. And I think Fidel Castro wrote you a letter of congratulations, did he not, on your magnificent triumph? It seems to me that you're surrounding yourself with the wrong friends. Mr. Weber, please continue, says the President. And the last concept is democracy. 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 You... Mr. Weber, one moment please, says the President. One moment please.
Wenn Sie Herrn Weber fortgesetzt niederschreien.
Well, if you try and shout Mr. Weber down, he's unable to use his speaking time effectively. So I think if there's a degree of quiet, he will be able to meet his speaking time. On democracy. Democracy involves people sitting and listening. We all know that. Mr. Weber, please conclude. Well, I was relatively grateful for the applause, actually, because it shows who the extremist people in Europe are trying to destroy Europe. That Mr. Tsipras is, of course, owed respect as an elected representative of his country, and I give him respect in that capacity, but I have to say, as political representatives, we are at loggerheads with you. You engage in provocation, I believe. We engage in compromise. You're looking at failure. We are looking for success. You don't like Europe. We love Europe. And I hope you will be able to come up with a programme, finally. Thank you.
Vielen Dank. Vielen Dank. So.
And now for the Liberal and Democratic Group, Mr. Verhofstadt.
To support what Mr. Weber and Mr. Pittella said towards Mr. Tusk, and say to him that at the moment when there is such a crisis in Europe, the European institutions have to be united. European Council and European Parliament, and as you are invited here, you invite us also on Council meetings, and do that also in the extraordinary meetings, please. Well, Mr. Tsipras, welcome. You see, you don't have to be afraid of the European Parliament. You had a refusal in the beginning. I'm saying as such a big Democrat as Mr. Tsipras afraid for a debate. That cannot be true. And you are here. So I'm pleased that you are here, because it's in the European Parliament that for the first time we discuss, in fact, with you this. I think that there are no solutions possible in the case of Greece and in the case of the Eurozone when they have not the backing of democracy, are not debated in a democracy and debated here in the European Parliament. And that is what we are doing today. But I have to tell you, and you started and you said, and it's true what you said the Greeks did enormous efforts. And that's true. But the problem is not there, it's that the Greek political class didn't do enough efforts in the case of Greece. That is the problem today. And I'm angry, I have to tell you. I'm angry because you are talking about reforms, but we never see concrete proposals of reforms. And I'm angry why? I'm angry because we are in fact sleepwalking towards a Grexit. Already 5 years we are sleepwalking, with the help and with the support, you hear them, of the people of the extreme right at the end. And not only we are sleepwalking, the last months we are running to a Grexit, I have more the impression. But it is not you and it is not we who shall pay the bill. It's going to be the ordinary Greek citizens who are going paying the bill of a Grexit of 30–40%. And so, I have to tell you, if we want to avoid it, there is only one possible way, and you know it very well. And the only possible way is that you come forward in the coming days, in the coming 48 hours, with a credible reform package. And that doesn't mean to say, yeah, I want to end clientelism and so on. No, that means that you make a roadmap, that you make a clear calendar, no intentions, that there are end dates of the different reforms we need desperately in Greece. And let me give you the 5 things what you have to do. Let me give you the 5 things what you have to do. I'm even ready to come to Athens to discuss it with you, because I like such a challenge. With you directly. But what you have to do, first, ending the clientelistic system. You need to put legislation for that on the table that doesn't exist, and not to apply your self-clientelism. Because a few weeks ago, 13 directors in the Ministry of Education has to be nominated, and by accident it were 12 of the Syriza party, and only one, they don't know what his affiliation really is. That's the reality. You're using the system. You are falling in... You're using the system. You are falling in the trap also of PASOK, who was also the big party of change in Greece after the colonels, and who did nothing at all than using the clientelistic system for years and for years in their own advantage. You have to downsize the public sector. I know it's difficult maybe for the leftists, but it has to be done. Because 800,000 people, civil servants, that cannot work. You, Mr. Tsipras, you have to transform the public banks in a private banking sector. You have to open the markets and the professions for young people. We don't have legislation. Put legislation on the table to open at least 10 professions who are still closed in your country. And finally, let's propose to end the privileges in your country. The privileges of the ship owners, the privilege of the military, the privilege of the Orthodox Church in your country, the privilege... Yeah, but you like it, privilege, okay, very fine. They like privileges, but I not. The privileges of the Greek islands, and the privilege, not to forget, of the political parties, the privilege of the political parties in your countries who receive every day loans and money from public banks who are in fact bankrupt. Also, Syriza, your party, receives such money. And that is a strong... What I ask to you is put all this together in a credible package and put it on the table now in the coming days. And I'm pretty sure that from the other side, from the European side, we're going to be ready to find a solution for debt. We're going to find a solution for all these problems. But it has to be done that way. And you can do it because there was never a prime minister in Greece who had such a strong mandate as you. You have even a double mandate. You won the elections and you won the referendum. So you're in the only position of the only political leader in Greece who can put an end to that system in Greece. And I said it to you, we also have our responsibility. We have to make, in my opinion, a debt redemption fund the fastest as possible, and we have to do it the fastest as possible also in the Council. But first things first. You need to come forward with your reform package. It is not a chicken or egg discussion, ladies and gentlemen. And you have a choice, and that is my conclusion. The choice that we have is very simple. How do you want to be remembered? As an electoral accident who made its people poorer in his country? Or want you to be remembered, Mr. Tsipras, as a real revolutionary reformer in the tradition of Trikoupis and Venizelos? I'm not talking about the Venizelos of PASOK, the new one. I'm talking of the real Venizelos, the big leader between the two world wars, who modernized this country, a liberal, who in fact modernized his administration. That is the choice to make. And I know what you people want. 80% of your people want to stay in Europe and in the Eurozone. So show what you can now and show that you're a real leader and not a false prophet. Do it!
Mr. Synadinos.
Thank you very much indeed. I would first and foremost like to address you, Mr. Schulz, on your unacceptable words about the Greek referendum. Who and on what basis said that if no wins, the Greeks should look for another currency? With what mentality, what competence, what right are you in getting involved in the political happenings in my country? I would like to address the German Chancellor for what she has done, what the Germans did to the Greeks during the Second World War. Over 1 million dead. People were lost, they starved to death, and there was this huge loan to the Third Reich. There are millions from these repayments which you are refusing to actually include in the question of the debt. And so you dare turn round and speak in this way. And what about our rights? You, I think, and Mr. Weber should be turning to the Chancellor of Germany and asking her about what is due. Now, do you think that the Greeks will bow their heads when they didn't during the slavery of the Ottoman Empire? The decision which was taken yesterday It was a no, and the Tsipras government now is apparently planning to pass a new agreement, a new memorandum. But yes, we can exist and survive without the Eurozone. The Eurozone either should unite or should dissolve. Thank you.
Das Wort hat jetzt für die EF.
And now Mr. Farage for the FD Group.
Thank you. What we're seeing in this chamber this morning, and indeed across the whole of Europe, is an irreconcilable cultural difference between Greece and Germany, a split between the north and the south of Europe. The European project is actually beginning to die. Nobody in this room will recognise that, but actually the peoples of Europe are saying we were never asked whether we wanted this. This has been foisted upon us. And we need to understand why EMU doesn't work. Those monsters, Kohl and Mitterrand, backed up by the clever but dangerous Delors, believed that if they put in place an economic and monetary union, then as night follows day, there would be political union, that there would be an acceptance of this project, that the north and south of Europe would converge, that we'd all start to love each other, that we'd all begin to feel a European identity, that we'd all begin to show allegiance to the flag and the anthem. Those of us, of course, that criticised this were told that we were extremists and we lacked vision. Well, one vision we didn't lack is we understood that the countries of Europe are different, and that if you try and force together different people or different economies without first seeking the consent of those people, it is unlikely to work. And the plan has failed. This isn't just Greece we're talking about today. The whole of the Mediterranean now finds itself in the wrong currency. And yet virtually nobody in the political arena has got the courage to stand up and say that. Indeed, I feel that the continent is now divided from north to south. There is a new Berlin Wall, and it's called the euro. And the old enmities have been resumed. Just listen to the way that the German leader of the Christian Democrat group this morning attacked Mr. Spiras. I think it was absolutely disgusting, but it shows the way north and south now feel about each other. Mr. Tsipras, your country should never have joined the euro. I think you acknowledge that, but the big banks, the big businesses and big politics forced you in. Goldman Sachs, the German arms manufacturers, they were all very happy. And when the bailouts began, they weren't for the Greek people. Those bailouts were to bail out French, German and Italian banks. They haven't helped you at all. And these years of austerity, these years of high unemployment, of increasing poverty, none of it's worked. In fact, your debt-GDP ratio has gone from 100% at the start of the crisis to 180% right now. It would be madness, sir, to continue on this course. You have been very brave. You called that referendum when one of your predecessors tried to do the same. The bully boys of Brussels had him removed. They tried their best again. Mr. Juncker said you would have to leave the euro and leave the European Union. Even Mr. Schulz, the President of the Parliament, who one would have thought might be neutral, said that if the Greeks voted no, their power supplies may even go down. There were threats and bullying, but the Greeks stood firm. But, sir, you cannot have your cake and eat it. They will give you no more, these people. They can't afford to. If they give you more, they'll have to give other Eurozone members more. So your moment has come. And frankly, if you've got the courage, you should lead the Greek people out of the Eurozone with your head held high. Get back your democracy. Get back control of your country. Give your people the leadership and the hope that they crave. Yes, it'll be tough for the first few months, but with a devalued currency and with friends of Greece all over the world, you will recover.
Now for 1 minute, Mr. KORWIN MIKKE.
Thank you. The European Union promotes democracy everywhere, so it had seen it done in Greece. But the Greek people was quite rational. They were told that moderate Euro-socialism is good, so perhaps the more radical socialism of Syriza is better. As simple as that, very logical. Moreover, they were advised by half-wits of IMF, ECB and World Bank that they should cut the social expenditure, which is right, but also to raise the taxes. How the Greeks were to pay their debts if anybody trying to work is being punished by the income tax? Only the very rich countries can survive income tax and other socialist inventions. We think that for Greeks, turned between Euro-socialism and National Socialism, there is only one rescue. In 1973, Chile, occupied by the gang of Salvador Allende, was in much worse state than the present Greece. Then General August Pinochet introduced normal economy, and in 2 years, Chile became the richest country in Latin America. Black colonials are not the solution, but I hope that some golden general will fulfill his duty and save Greece from the present turmoil. Moreover, I think European Union must be destroyed.
And now, colleagues, please, I'll give the floor for 2 minutes to Mr. Salvini.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you, Madam President. I am ashamed. I'm ashamed that someone in here claims to represent Europe, that someone in here is managing 550 million people, leaving our citizens open to war and poverty. I thank Mr. Tsipras. I thank the Greek people. We have very different political opinions, but I don't want to question their approach on this anti-democratic cage which is Europe, this common currency we don't want. Someone on behalf of the biggest party represented in this parliament is talking with disrespect about this referendum. Citizens who go out to vote, who make their choice, because, well, if the citizens vote and make their choice, they may push people out. They voted against in France 10 years ago, in the Netherlands. They will vote also in Denmark and in the UK. I'm frightened of this Europe, which continues with its sanctions against Russia, and with all of these armed forces around as well. And you know, there are certain people in here who are saying that the problem is not Islamic terrorism, it's the right, the populist, it's Orban, it's Le Pen, it's Cameron, it's Liga Nord. You know, we are dangerous. We have to put the clamps on you. I want a Europe based on work, on respect of human rights, on farming, on fishing, which doesn't approve this disgusting international treaties which help the multinationals and not our people, not our workers. The ceiling is falling in over our heads. Thank you, Mr. Tsipras. Thank you to the people of Greece, and thank you to those citizens who with such guts decided to break out of this cage, because I am not going to leave the future of my children in the hands of some people who totally disrespect democracy.
The ENF group, the group leader, Mrs. Le Pen.
Mr. Tsipras, our positions are very different on a whole series of topics. There's no question about that. But we share the desire to give the protagonism back to the people against the interests of the bureaucrats. And so we were quite pleased about the organisation of the referendum. This referendum on austerity in Greece meant a return to the noblest kind of politics in Europe, which is often all too technocratic. Europe's institutions have dropped the mask and shown their true face, horror. And then perhaps that's a good thing. They tried everything to win the referendum. There was all kinds of moral pressure brought to bear. There were forecasts about the disasters that would take place if there was a vote, a no vote. We know about this in France. We had the same kind of thing at the time of the vote on the European Constitution, and the President of the European Parliament sitting here even dared to suggest that your democratically elected government should be overthrown, Mr. Tsipras, and replaced by a government of technocrats. And the IMF report was published on Thursday. The Eurogroup countries had tried to prevent the publication of that, and that was a report that reflected your views that Greece cannot repay her debt because the debt is unsustainable and thus must be renegotiated. And the European Central Bank finally tried to intervene by strangling Greek banks and provoking their closure. I think this is the first time in history that a central bank has, off its own bat, unleashed a completely artificial crisis. But the anger of the Greek people vis-à-vis the austerity was such that they swept everything away. Over and above the threats, the Greek people raised their heads and showed their true mettle. What people would have accepted what the Greek people have put up with for 5 years? Who would have accepted that, ladies and gentlemen, in the EPP and the Liberals who frenetically applauded Mr. Weber's list of charges? Would you accept that kind of campaign, would you? Okay, so make a campaign for it. Why not promise to your respective peoples a 25% cut in wages, a 25% cut in their pensions? Why not put that across to your peoples? They'd love it. And the explosion of infant mortality, a tripling of unemployment. Be brave. Live up to your promises. The euro and austerity are Siamese twins. They're joined at the hip. That's the fact. And you cannot get your people out of austerity unless you allow it to escape from the euro. I think that in agreement with Europe's institutions in a concerted fashion, that Greece must negotiate a way out of this clamp, the steel jaws that are closing on southern Europe. That's the euro. All other peoples in Europe should look at what's happening in Greece. And maybe an exit from the euro would allow for renewal of durable growth. That's what Mr. Krugman, the Nobel Prize for the Economy, has said. What others are afraid of is that Greece will show by leaving the euro that one can survive better outside it than in it. Thank you.